Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Jeremy, founder of QuickMail.io.
And this is Jack from emailsthatsell.com. In today's episode, we're covering the number one most common copywriting mistake found in today's cold emails. We'll cover the one-sentence mantra that will help you keep your prospects' attention while reading your cold emails, a few before and after examples of cold emails rewritten using the advice given in this episode, the only time you should use the word I in your cold emails, and finally, the copywriting resource that's going to make everything you do with cold email writing easy.
Jack, I got a small story for you. One of my users sent me an email and asked me to review his cold email. And the reason why I bring it up in this show today is because he mentioned that he listened to the Fox and the Crow. And I thought, I was like, oh, great, that's going to be great. Let's look at it. And in fact, it wasn't that great. There was a lot of me, I. And sure, there was a bit of compliment in it, but most of it was just very self-centered. And it kind of made me think that maybe we haven't touched enough on that point. And I figured out maybe I should ask you, what you think of it and how we help this person.
This I versus you, or writing, let's say, reader-focused copy is the very first thing that you might learn when you start to study good copywriting. And really, it's probably going to be the first major change in your writing once you kind of nail this down. And happily, once you do make this transition, things get easier. People sort of just get what you're saying a little bit easier, and your copy just does what it should. When you sit down at your keyboard, keep in mind that nobody cares about you or your business. That's a great mentality to have. It's like just knowing that whoever's reading your email will be most interested in what's in it for them. Okay, Jeremy, so maybe we can dive into the copy a little bit. Can you tell me what stood out to you to indicate that they should be focusing more on their reader, not the writer?
It was kind of obvious. The first few lines contain things like, I want to, da-da-da, or please give me 10 seconds for blah, 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 or I have found some things, blah, blah, blah. My goal is to, you get the point. Those things are not necessarily hard to change, at least using you instead of I. Like, how would you feel if something happened rather than I want to make something happen kind of thing? That's the first step.
Good news is you can communicate the same thing with putting the prospect first. All it takes is just rewording your sentences. You can still invite them to a 10-minute call. You can still explain what it is that you're doing. You're just switching it around so that it's leading with the reader as opposed to yourself. So let's look at an example to make this a little bit more concrete. I've got a little folder in my Gmail where I store all of my cold emails that I receive. And I recommend anyone who's listening do the same, just because it ends up being kind of a nice little swipe file if you get a good email. And if anything, it shows you the competition out there so that you feel a little bit more motivated to do what you're doing. Okay, so let me read an intro of a cold email that I got this week. So it says, and I'll replace the company name and maybe the person's name with something else. It says, I'm Sam, technical consultant at company. I wanted to get in touch with you with regards to a possible technology partnership. We do a lot of work with agencies in the US and provide turnkey solutions for X, Y, and Z, enterprise software, mobile apps, and custom web platforms, right? So
there is we. I mean, that's an improvement.
A slight improvement, but again, it's
very self-centered.
Yeah, right. Even though he's talking about his company still, he doesn't have my attention. So let's turn this exact intro around. We're not going to say anything new or introduce any new concepts, but instead we'll just make it focused on the prospect. So here's the rewrite. Hi, Jack. This year, a few other lead gen agencies like Competitor Y and Competitor Z have partnered with us to make money doing app development for their clients. They've been making between $2,000 and $3,000 a month from this without doing any extra work. Since you're in the same space and we still have space for another agency, might you be interested in discussing more about this?
What's interesting is there is a new concept here. It's not only there's a change from I to you, kind of thing. We could all say, instead of I need 10 minutes of your time, do you have 10 minutes? But I think what's important is also to figure out what is the benefit for the reader. So step one is to actually use you instead of I. But on top of that, you need to find what the value for the other person that you want to communicate. And that was, a great rewrite of you on that end.
Our job as cold email copywriters is to make it crystal clear how your prospect is going to benefit by replying to your email. If you can do that well and make it obvious that when they reply, they're going to get something valuable in return, whether that's a call with you, maybe it's some more information that can help them do a better job at work, whatever it may be, you're just going to get more positive replies. And that starts by writing a prospect-centered email and sort of stepping away from what it is that you care about.
I like that, prospect-centered email instead of self-centered email. In fact, if you listen to episode 39 about reciprocity, try to master this part, and I think that will help you really understand that you have to offer something to the user which forces you to actually put yourself in their shoes and try to figure out what is of value to that person that I can offer.
Absolutely. Definitely worth a revisit if you're struggling with rewriting emails so that it's less about you. Now, one thing I want to be clear, if anyone's listening and they're maybe ending the podcast and they sit down at their desk and they say, okay, no more writing I in my cold emails. I actually don't want to leave anybody with that idea, because unlike traditional sales letter copy or just traditional marketing copywriting, you can and I think should include a little bit of I in your cold emails. And this is for nothing other than explaining why you decided to reach out to them. This is different in cold email because unlike most forms of sales and marketing messages, it's one-to-one. It's you reaching out to them, and I think that needs to be explained in the email, and that can only be done by saying, I reached out for X. And that I reached out for X can be explained a lot of different ways, but I think as soon as you do, then that person is going to understand what it was about them that got you to reach out. So it sets things on a much more personal level, making them feel like it's not a many-to-one MailChimp style email that they might be receiving.
I think the key point here is that it's only one line, not your entire email, just focusing on I kind of thing.
Okay, so I have an example of this, and I think it does an okay job of sort of driving this point home. Let's take kind of an industry all of us are familiar with at some level, SEO. It ends up my cold email folder is filled with the majority of SEO type messages. So
you probably can do a map of the entire industry by just looking at your folder.
That's true. Yeah. And if I did, SEO would be a big one. But let's just take this first line here, and I'll show you what I mean by including this I sentence to help make it a little bit more personal message and an email that's more likely to get a response. So the original email in my cold email folder starts off a little bit something like this. So it says, I'm affiliated with an SEO company based in India that's helped over 200 businesses rank on the first page of Google for competitive industries. If I'm rewriting this, my job, like Jeremy pointed out, is to do two things. One, make this so that whoever's reading this message is going to know exactly how I can benefit them. And two, make sure that I'm writing it for the prospect and not myself. Because remember, the mantra is nobody cares about you or your business. It's all about them, or what's in it for me. That's what your prospect is thinking the entire time they're reading through your message. Okay, so here's how I would rewrite that first line. And I'm going to start this conversation off a little bit differently. Yes, it's varying from the original copy quite a bit, but this is just going to perform better, so I'm going to go with it. It says, Hi, Jack. I read your last post about cold email targeting. By the way, your story about Facebook ads ended up changing my mind about list building. Anyways, I figured that since you're blogging, maybe you were interested in ranking a bit higher for your keywords like cold email list building. So those first two sentences, I'm using I pretty heavily, but I'm doing so in a way to let the prospect know how I came across them and why I decided to reach out. So it just starts off the message, and it starts off using the word I a few times, but again, it feels much more personal than the original message. And also something important to know is after these 2 lines, I switch entirely, and the rest of the email is only focused on the prospect and what it is they can get from a potential conversation with me. Okay, so what did you think, Jeremy?
I think it's great. Another trick, or actually another strategy I will apply as well. If you're a long-time listener, you know it. It's episode 5. It's how to build a hot list of prospects. It forces you to really figure out, why am I reaching out to those people? And when you know exactly the avatar of people you're going to be able to help, then I think naturally you can find out what would really excite those people. A hint, they're not getting excited by making you happy because they actually don't know you. So try to figure out what would excite them and be willing to then engage in a conversation with you.
And what are some sort of strategies for that, Jeremy? Let's say you may have an idea. Let's use this example. Maybe, let's say an agency that's blogging, and maybe you want to help them out with SEO. Where would you go to start looking for things that they may get excited about?
Well, I think I will just basically piggybacking on your example. I would look at people ranking number 4 for those keywords, number 4 or 5, and tell them, like, you're very close actually. And do you know that actually for every position you're losing, you're probably halving your traffic. So how would it feel to actually go number 3 and then double your traffic? I think that will just basically be just very spot on, rather than, talking to people who are probably number 20, don't even have any ranking based on this keyword. I think you're more receptive to double a strategy that is currently kind of working than actually trying to bring a strategy from nothing. I think you'll be having more chances that way.
Another thing too is if you're starting list building from this angle, where you choose the keyword and you find the people who are ranking in the 4 or 5 spot, you get to choose what keyword that is. So if you have a case study on a similar industry, you can just find people that match that kind of company profile. Maybe they're just in a related industry, not directly competing. And that way, that case study is going to resonate a lot more. And it wasn't any extra work for you because you started with that keyword in the first place. Now, just compare that to maybe a more traditional mindset or traditional sales approach where it's like, okay, we're going after small, medium-sized businesses in the US that have an e-commerce store. Let's try and sell them SEO. That's an uphill battle, where if you can find people who are more of a match, or what Jeremy and I are calling this hot list, then things get a lot easier. And then that's where you pair it with the prospect-centered email copywriting that's going to get them sort of nodding their head as they're reading your email saying, yes, this is what I'm looking for. I can see exactly what's in it for me.
It should really be a love story between you and your prospect and not a charity donation story.
And what do you mean by the charity donation story? Would that be the many to one?
It will be like, just please give me money, or give me your business kind of thing. So you really want that both of the side actually are excited about working together rather than actually all be centered around you and your needs.
Right. And if we think back to the reciprocity episode, we're saying, look, don't even worry so much about getting the sales conversation started. Sometimes get your foot in the door by giving them something in exchange for feedback, just building up reciprocity so that you get a productive conversation started instead of asking for your needs right away, being you focused.
So here's what I will recommend people doing after this cast is looking at your last call email you've been sending and seeing, if I was on the receiving end, would I be as excited to receive this email? Would I get something out of that? And very often it's really hard. Chances are, yes, the answer is no. And it's very often really hard.
And I would say, as you go through your email, if you find any lines that sound a little bit like, I would like to, or my company does, think about rewriting that in a way that's your prospect is actually going to care about. Because you're only going to get someone on the phone or to reply when you can tie in your message to how that's going to make their life better. And instead of trying to get your prospect to work harder and have them sit down, read something that you guys do and translate it in their mind to figure out how can this benefit them, you can basically shortcut that process by just laying it out plain and simple. This is you. This is what you could get. And here's how.
Yeah, and if you feel compelled about spitting out everything you're good at, like, hey, we're an amazing company, we are XYZ, instead of doing that, try to use the reverse strategy, which is laying down things like, hey, we've been working with competitors and get them there. That will make them think like, oh, it's an amazing company to work with. That works way better.
That's brilliant because you're building your credibility without talking about your company. And instead, you're letting them assign value to you.
And because they went there with their own judgment, then they trust their own judgment better. As a side note, I actually was helping a lot of people with their resume. And instead of mentioning like, I'm a good team player, I'm excellent at C++, whatever, I highly encourage them to find the sentence they could say so that people will then deduce that automatically. So instead of saying I'm a good team player, I would mention a lot of things that I contributed in a team that makes other people think that I'm a good team player. So that's the sort of things that you can apply as well to cold email.
Bringing this back to one of our examples earlier today, it's instead of saying in this first example I gave where they're looking for lead generation agencies to partner with them for mobile app development, instead of the pitch which was originally used, that was, I wanted to get in touch with you to see if you were interested in a potential partnership. Instead, it's some of our partners like you have been making between $2,000 and $3,000 a month without doing in development work. That's sort of cutting right to the chase as opposed to saying, we're this large company, we work with a lot of agencies, we are, and instead turns it around so that I see the worth of engaging with them. They put it in my terms.
Jack, do you have any book to recommend if they want to take a deeper look into this?
Yeah, so I'm going to recommend one of my favorite copywriting books. I was lucky enough to find it early on, and it's done a great job of driving this concept of writing for the reader home for me. It's called The Copywriter's Handbook by Robert Bly, and you can get it on Amazon or Kindle, and the book takes just enough time to let this idea sink in, and you'll never write another writer-focused cold email again after you get this book.
And there you have it. Writing prospect-centered email will automatically make you better than 90% of cold email out there, even if you're selling SEO. So here are 3 takeaways you can start using right now to improve your reply rate. Number 1, revisit your cold emails to make sure you're focused on your prospect instead of yourself. Number 2, use selfish words like I or we only while building bridges or establishing a relationship with your prospect, only that part. And number 3, review and segment your prospect list to make sure you are offering something that will get your prospect excited first.
Hey, cold emailer.
Yeah, you.
If you got some value from this episode, give us a high vibe by sharing a 2-sentence review on iTunes.
Or Stitcher or Tuning. That works too.
It's a quick way to help other growth-minded folks like us find this podcast
So they can send awesome emails.
and make everyone's inbox a better place. Thanks.